We are back from the holiday break. Jordan, I brought back with me a cold, so I'm wearing one of my new Dolphin sweaters. You'll laugh at this for my birthday. My mom said she was tired of seeing me wear the same Dolphins jersey and Dolphins hoodie. So she got me a new jacket. She got me a long sleeve shirt, and she got me a Dolphins polo. So I have a bunch of different Dolphins gear to wear going forward.
Yeah, well, if we're showing off our gear today, I'm wearing my old school Citronauts Letterman jacket here because UCF is going through quite turmoil. Anybody that's listened to this show for the last few years know that I've been very big on the get rid of Gus Malzahn train. And it looks like I'm there. Gus took the job as the offensive coordinator at Florida State. And UCF is in a swing of 3 days that I'm excited to talk about here in the next couple of minutes. But how are the birthday celebrations? How was Thanksgiving? And why is your screen red?
That's the thing. I was just looking at that. I'm like, why is my screen so red? Let me adjust. The lighting in my room is so weird that at times it just gets like that. But that looks a lot better. It just keeps adjusting. We're just gonna have to deal with that, unfortunately. It's just the lighting I have. So
maybe at some point go to like a blue screen and then a green screen, and it can look like your face is changing colors throughout the episode.
Yeah, we could do that. Maybe what I will do is I might just put a background on because that might help as well. Let me see, because sometimes that takes away. But yeah, it seems like looking at it, it seems like UCF's already had like 26 different coaches from what I've seen.
Oh, UCF's fans, let me tell you, have gone through the 5 stages of grief like 12 different times already. It was first Gus was gone and it was great. Then the name right away was John Summerall. Then it was G.J. Kinney. Then it was Jamie Chadwell. Then it was Scott Frost. Then now today, for a little while, it was Lincoln Riley. I saw Dan Mullen thrown around. I'm sure I've seen Deion Sanders thrown around a lot. It's been a crazy search. It's been a crazy couple days. I'm very interested to see the direction that they go.
Yeah, Zach, I'm sitting down. I don't feel good enough, but yeah, that's
all right. Let's stop the serious talk for a second. Brett, you got to do one of those full. What do they call them? Where you show what you're wearing from top to bottom, say the brands.
I don't know the brand, but it does have the AFC logo, and it does have the Dolphins helmet. So, shout out to my madre. I don't know where she got this, but it's pretty good. Thank you, Kayla. I eat corn the long way, apparently.
Oh, fit check. That's what it is. Thank you, Zach. Always here for me when I need it. Can you find our producer? Can you do that? Yeah, shout out to Brett's mom on the great gifts. What else did you get for your birthday, Brett? What did you get any gift cards? I'm always curious to know where people get gift cards from.
Did not get any gift cards, no.
Oh, where would you want a gift card from?
If I do get, well, where I always get gift cards from is they always give me Subway and Jersey Mike's.
Okay. So if you are buying Brett a gift card out there, do it. But back to the UCF search, Brett. I know I'm more on the rival side of things. You're more on the Reddit side of things. What have you seen over there? And what does it look like?
Well, it started with J.G. Kinney, which you told me you think is, or G.J. Kinney, excuse me. It sounds like that was a thing on his side. Then it became Jamie Chadwell. Then it became, it looked like him for a while. Then it became, well, we think we're getting a Big 12 quarterback or a head coach right now who's already in the Big 12.
If it was a Big 12 head coach, I know you and I talked about that for a little bit. What Big 12 coach do you think realistically would leave where they are right now to come to UCF?
Willie Fritz.
But does UCF? But it looks like from the names that they're throwing out there that they're looking bigger than Willie Fritz. It looks like
I don't think any other team would leave him.
Maybe like a Lance Leopold.
I would go with Lance Leopold. He has definitely proven to be a program builder, and he's won at places that are not easy to win, whether it was Wisconsin Whitewater, whether it was Buffalo, and now Kansas. So you can do a lot worse than him. Shout out to our friends at the Dive Bar who are joining us today. So definitely make sure you give all them a follow.
Eventually.
Yeah, we will get there.
But if you're talking Lance Leopold, does a guy like Andy Kolenicki at Penn State, the offensive coordinator at Penn State, make more sense? He's younger. He worked with Leopold at 3 different stops. Does going for a coordinator, maybe one that's playing this weekend, maybe a guy like Will Stein, something like that, does that make more sense going a younger coordinator, a route that's worked for UCF a couple times?
Normally I would say yes, but when you're in such a wide open Big 12 where now I think they've established going forward that if you win the conference title game in one of the Power Four conferences, you're in the playoff.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to try and hit big. The other name, of course, everybody, I know you saw it, but I don't know if everybody believes it, but apparently people are saying Lincoln Riley's a possibility because USC wants to get out of that contract, but they can't afford the buyout.
Yeah, I think that Lincoln Riley went in a press conference, I believe, after that news kind of came out a little bit and said that he's staying at USC. But I did see confirmation that the two sides spoke. There was a plane that went from near the area where the Rams are, near the area with where USC is, to Orlando.
Maybe you guys are talking to Sean Foster, the UCLA coach.
Yeah, maybe. I see that as less likely because he seems like a UCLA guy.
Yeah, he is.
But it's funny because everybody, when they saw that flight, was like, oh, it's Scott Frost. The Frost is coming, posting the memes of the ice. But then it came out that maybe it was actually to meet Lincoln Riley. From what I think Colt Nicky makes a lot of sense because of the connection between Terry and Lance Leopold. I also think that if UCF is really trying to take a shot like that just about every big coach that's out there that they might throw something at it. And all it takes is one guy that's looking for a change. I mean, you could say 5-6 years ago, oh, it's crazy to think of one of those big name guys going to UCF. But at the end of the day, it's Big 12. It's a wide open conference in years to start. And arguably, if you look across the Big 12, if I'm picking where I'm going to be recruiting from and I can pick any location, why wouldn't you pick Orlando?
Yeah. The only other name that would be realistic that I would think that I'd want is Kenny Dillingham, but I don't see him leaving Arizona State. Yeah, because you're not getting Dion. Sorry.
Like what I said, which I believe is true, Dion isn't, and whether he gets them or not, he's in talks for NFL jobs. And those jobs aren't going to open up for a couple months now. So why would he possibly take a chance and ruin the opportunity of getting to coach maybe his son or Travis Hunter for agreeing to come to UCF? I don't see it being a smart move. I don't see it being a move he would make. But at the same time, I mean, props to UCF for taking shots. Like, it shows they're serious about competing. It shows they're serious about being the top echelon of that Big 12. And I like to see it. I really hope, I mean, obviously as a UCF alum, as a big UCF fan, I hope this hire works out. But I think they have a chance to make where, if you were a coach, Brett, would you be going to UCF, UNC, or West Virginia?
In order, the way you just said it, UCF, UNC, and West Virginia.
So by that logic alone, and you're a Michigan fan, so you have no allegiance to anything in there whatsoever.
West Virginia hates us because we stole all their coaches about
and their colors.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Shout out to the worst Michigan team ever beating Ohio State, too.
Oh, man. Wasn't that something?
It was not enjoyable to watch. The ending was enjoyable, but the game itself was not enjoyable to watch.
But it had to be enjoyable as a Michigan fan, just seeing, actually, and for the people at home, 8 minutes and 55 seconds.
Damn right I am.
When I specifically asked Brett if we could spend an extensive amount of time for once, one time in the history of the show, I want to talk deeply about UCF. And Brett needs to turn it into Michigan in 8 minutes.
No, I just said shout out to us beating Ohio State. No, honestly, the only thing I will say about UCF that's negative is about Scott Frost, because the one year we beat you guys by like 40 points and he said we were the tougher team. Okay.
You were. He was
no,
right.
You guys were. No, he said UCF was the tougher team.
Oh, because we were. He was right, obviously.
You only lost by 40 to 50 points.
No, but overall, if I had to pick right now, I feel like when it comes to some of these hires, I feel like it's never the guy It's never the guy that you originally suspect that it is. Brett derailed it. We run the tape back. Run the tape back. No, I don't think it's ever the guy you immediately think it is, and then it makes sense. If I had to say in order, I would say the off the wall name that I think gets the job is Andy Koltnicki from Penn State. Other than that, maybe Lance Leopold comes over from the Big 12 from Kansas, or it ends up still being a guy like Jamie Chadwell.
Why not try Rhett Lashley at SMU?
I just think that SMU right now making the playoff, Texas money, Dallas money. I see them being able to match anything Rhett gets. I'm giving him an extension. I think you definitely ask, but I think that UCF and SMU are, although they're a lot better than us this year, we've had better years than them in certain years. I think we're on similar trajectories. I think they're a little further along in the process right now. But a guy like a Rhett Lashley is a guy that we should be looking at. A young, fiery coach that can really – the thing I miss about UCF, and all the respect to Gus Malzahn, I think that he came into a very tough situation. We got worse in every year under him. However, it wasn't an easy situation coming in around COVID times. But I wish him nothing but losses at Florida State. But I think that UCF was fast and fun in that 2017 range, a couple years before, a couple years after. We were 35-4 in the 3-year span before Gus Malzahn took the job. I don't expect to be 35-4 over the next 3 years, but I expect the team to be fun to watch, and I expect us to play to our strengths of Florida athletes, spreading the ball out, getting the ball to the receivers, and also being able to play tough physical defense.
So this is just a scenario I thought of off the top of my head. If you could get Barry Odom from UNLV and it meant bringing Brennan Marion in as offensive coordinator, would you do that?
I love that. People were talking about Brennan Marion as a head coach. And I think that that's a big jump for him. But I do think, and we'll get to the Dolphins quite here in a minute, I do think that Barry Odom would be a really good hire if he brings Brennan Marion with him.
Yep. And that's a good segue to the Dolphins because Brennan Marion is actually a former Miami Dolphin.
Okay, fine. Let's talk about the Dolphins.
Yeah, he signed into that. He was signed with us, but he tore his ACL. Some of you guys might know the Dolphins' winning streak ended. We could talk about National Signing Day. We could talk about college football, but I guess you guys want to hear us talk about Dolphins.
Well, no, one producer wants us to talk about the Dolphins. I have a question for you, Brett. Let's stay on college football for a second. Did Miami get fucked?
Yes. They did lose to Syracuse. They couldn't stop Syracuse. But I'm a firm believer that if you're a 2-loss team and a Power 4, I almost said Power 5, but there's no Power 5 anymore, over a 3-loss team in the SEC and another Power 4, you should go with the 2-loss team. So, yes, I think Miami got fucked.
I didn't like the guy's explanation. I don't know his name. I'm not going to pretend to know his name. I didn't like the guy's explanation where he said that it was 2 out of the last 3 games when Alabama played Mercer. I didn't like that argument. I think that it should be outlawed. I don't think that teams in the SEC or the Big Ten really should even be allowed to play teams outside of the Power 4.
I'd agree.
I think that if you're going to hold those teams to such a high standard, I think they shouldn't be allowed to play games outside the Power 4. But I also think that Miami beating Syracuse or beating Georgia Tech is easily in the playoffs no matter what right now.
Yeah. Here's the explanation, though, Mr. S. They were left out of it for a 3-loss team. So that's where the issue is.
No, he doesn't. He's just saying you shouldn't have lost 2 games.
You shouldn't have, but, Bama shouldn't have lost 3 games.
Mr. S is just mad we're not talking about the Dolphins.
Yep. And we can get to the Dolphins because that did happen. It's been a week, basically, since the game. Let's bring up Mr. S's comment. It's obvious we need to complete new approach to roster construction this offseason. How much faith do you have in McDaniels to adopt his speed-first approach to picking players? He's quite stubborn, but we've seen him grow as a play caller this year. So is there some hope? So I'm going to keep on this. Do we need to get more talent on the offensive line? Yes, I think we all agree with that. I think a big issue most people talked about was the trenches. We see the score, the big issue, and for anybody who's on X and Blue Sky, whatever else, Duke Mayweather is the best offensive line guy out there. We had a horrible approach blocking wise, as he says. To simplify what he said, is the Dolphins took the approach of just having the offensive line block 5 guys, have them use their eyes and pick which person to block. Didn't go well because Green Bay shows multi-man pressure. They show it, they bring it back. So you had a lot of guys run free towards Tua. There's also a play where Liam Eichenberg had to try and block 2 guys. He had his hand on one guy and his other hand on another guy, and he didn't block either guy. So there's an issue there, and I think there were some issues play calling. Do I think McDaniel will change his style a bit? I think he will have to, and I think he knows that because of his time in San Francisco. While they were fast, they had very physical receivers. And I know the trenches have been a topic of conversation all year. This is how I will simplify the Packers game. Dolphin player gets hit, they go down right away. Packers player gets hit, it's a 4 or 5 yard gain. What was it? 20 missed tackles for like 150 yards after contact.
Yeah.
That's why we lost. So do we need to get more physical on the offensive line, or more talented, I would say? Sure. I'll throw this to you real quick, Jordan, or for you to think about while I finish my thought. I would honestly put Patrick Paul and Isaiah Wynn into the starting lineup going forward, because Kendall Lamb, as good as he is, he cannot run black to save his life. We have fallen apart with Austin Jackson out of the lineup on the offensive line, because for all of his struggles, he can at least be counted on to block his man one-on-one, and that has changed a lot. We also just need to get physical on the back end, because look, our defensive line needs more talent too, but it didn't matter. I saw our defensive line winning a lot of matchups. Just the people behind him couldn't make a tackle. And the other thing I will say is I'm at the point, Javon Holland, thank you for your service. Goodbye. Don't want you on this team anymore. So
right, I agree with that, and that is a wonderful segue for me, because you know who else needs to get more physical is the UCF defense. Really do. Whatever coach we bring in next year, and that's one thing people don't realize about that 2017 team, is what made that team so special. UCF is going to have the athletes to have good offense, but we need a coach that's going to come in, focus. I'm not even worried about who the offensive coordinator is. Who's going to be the defensive coordinator? Because if you have those athletes in Central Florida, you should be able to play some fine defense. It won't be the last time I derail to talk about UCF. But going to the Dolphins, it's a very similar thing. It really sucks watching 2 football teams play that are both not physical. I feel like when I talk about the Dolphins sometimes, and I talk about the UCF, I feel like I'm talking about similar things because there are similar issues. As far as the Dolphins are concerned, I think from this point to the end of the season, there should be a complete overhaul of playing all the young guys. I want to see which I want to know what players are going to be on this roster next year. I'm not saying that the season's over. We have 5 winnable games coming up in front of us. However, even though we have 5 winnable games, we need to start looking towards next year and seeing what the pieces are going to be that are transferable that allow us to get back to winning a Super Bowl being in Super Bowl contention next year, because Mike McDaniel is going to be on the hot seat going into next season if he makes it there. And I didn't think 4 weeks ago that I would be saying the words "if he makes it there."
Yeah, I think he'll be here. I think he's like, honestly, people may not like this, but some people may not like this. I think he has earned the right to fix it when something goes poorly because of how he's been. He has earned the right to fix it. But let's be honest, like, everybody talks about the trenches, and yes, we need to get more talented there, like we said. But who on this team do you trust to get a tough yard or to make a tough catch?
It's funny. The only guy I trusted to do it was on the Packers the other night, Chris Brooks.
The Dolphins, I would trust Jonnu Smith.
I think the last player I genuinely trusted to get a yard was Lusaka Polite.
Yeah. Honestly, I trust Tua to scramble more, and that's even with him being a concussion risk. But like, we just don't have guys who are tough. And again, Julian Hill ended up being one of our worst rated offensive players, which continues to be an issue. So was Durham Smythe. Malik Washington was our worst. We can talk about that in a second, but yeah, again, it's the beating a dead horse thing. We got it wrong with our tight ends. This might be a Mike McDaniel thing, but the thing I've learned, and I've said this before in the show, is player rotation tends to be the assistant's job. I think our running back rotation has been very poor, so I'd get rid of it. I would probably fire Studsville after the year because we're not. I like Achane. He is a big play threat, but he is not a power runner. He is not a short yardage guy, and it has suffered the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if you just simply look at, and we could talk about PFF all we want, but the numbers don't lie the way those guys are playing. Achane had a 0 rating in pass block. Mostert had a very low rating in pass block, although it was only, it looks like a couple or even one snap. But rotation's been bad. And, it's tough. But at this point, is it the offensive line? Is that what's making the running back room look worse? Is this a year where you just have to chalk it up to that? Or is it a coaching personnel issue?
I think it's a mix. Because the one thing that does show up, and I don't know how many people look at these stats, but in terms of running, what do they call it? But in terms of actually following blocking and getting yards with how the play is blocked, Achane is one of the worst running backs. When he's not touched, he does really well, but he's not very good when he has to make a guy miss, at least in the running game. So I think there is some issue there. Mostert clearly is just not this. He's lost some faith because of his fumbling issues. We're not even using him much anymore. And I think Jalen Wright lost some trust too, even though it was Skylar Thompson's fault to fumble for the touchdown. But I think it's a mixture. But I think, again, we rely on our tight ends for blocking, and they are all awful. Angold was good for a couple weeks. He was poor at the beginning of the year. He was poor after it. I think we just, and this is a common thing, I think we just misjudge where some of our personnel is, because even aside from River Craycraft, we don't even have good blocking wide receivers. And with the stretch runs, you have to be good blocking at the wide receiver position too. So I just think a lot of guys just haven't performed like we thought we would. And just to go back to this, yes, I don't know if it was the third down play, but there was a touchdown that Kendall Lamb just got ragdolled that would have been a touchdown with Austin Jackson.
Yeah, but that's whose fault is that?
Well,
the good teams, the teams that compete for the Super Bowl, they don't say that. Those teams, I'm sorry, I don't very often see those teams get ragdolled around the field, and that happened to the Miami Dolphins constantly.
It has happened more since Austin Jackson got hurt. Look, we all thought Kendall Lamb was a great swing tackle, and he's been good in pass protection, but we got to say, the run game has fallen apart with him in the game. He needs help from Liam Eichenberg, so that means everybody's switching, and people haven't adjusted. So yeah, we did get some stuff wrong. But again, we just don't have guys who can just go up and get the pass. So that's the issue. Defensively, like I said, we can say we're soft, and we were soft that game. But like Jordan Brooks normally makes tackles that he missed. But again, this is a Ravens style defense. We got a Ravens assistant to be our defensive coordinator. It is so reliant on good safety play, and we have not had any good safety play this year. That's why I'm like, I know Javon Holland is very popular with the fan base. I am probably the one person who's consistently said he's overrated, but I would only bring him back on a 1-year prove-it deal at this point. I don't bye, go. I don't want you on my team anymore.
I mean, what were the numbers? We have the 61st and 62nd ranked safeties in the league out of 64 starters.
Yep.
So when we're going into the offseason and we start talking about the draft, we said this on last week's show, but safety is going to be a key issue and a high. If we're drafting an athlete, it's either going to be a receiver or a safety.
Yeah. I see Mr. S saying that you can't rag on that. He's a backup tackle. I'm not ragging on him. And again, we'll say this. Very few teams in the NFL have 6 offensive linemen they trust, let alone 7. I just think we are at the point now where I would say, let's see what Isaiah Wynn and Patrick Paul have.
Yeah, Omar there trying to say that Holland's doing it for Poyer or taking it for Poyer. Is he?
I would say there's a point, but here's the issue. He's playing center field. There have been multiple times where he's gotten flat-footed, which has resulted in big touchdowns. There's been times where he has not had the depth he needs, and he's also missed tackles. And the thing with the Raven, like just with the style of defense, because again, not to bring it back to Michigan. Michigan has had their last 3 coordinators come from the Ravens, so I see the defense a lot. I would honestly say in the back 7, the most important positions are the 2 safeties in the slot coverage guy. And at this point, I think Holland would have to be the slot guy to get anything out of him. I just don't think his skill set just hasn't translated to what he's being asked to do, which you could say is on the coaches. But when I see people just making the mistakes he is, and that's not to absolve Poyer. Like they're both bad. That's like choosing between going to the bathroom in the woods and using an outhouse.
I'm pretty sure, and I like researching a good conspiracy theory from time to time, but I'm pretty sure Poyer was the cover spy for the Bills. This is one of the most atrocious seasons I've seen a good player have on the Dolphins, and we've seen some really bad signings for the Dolphins. I would personally like to see Javon Holland come back next year, not even on a 1-year prove-it deal. I'd like to see him back, sign an extension, and put a good safety next to him and give him a chance. And if that time he's still a liability, I'll take it. But I don't think he's a big enough issue on the team right now that we need to make another hole. I would rather see us improve that room around him than taking him and kicking him out of that room. And the other thing I'll point to is you want to talk about Eric Studesville. Marcus May left and went and had a great game last week. So is that a situation? Andrew Van Ginkel left. I mean, he was productive here. He left and is unbelievable in Minnesota. At some point, you have to start looking. It's not the guy. It's not the players. It's not. We need to build a culture as a team that is more physical, that is more disciplined, that is in better shape. And I'm not to say they're out of shape, but we need to be at the level of physicality and putting our head down. And there's that thing that we're missing, and there's no word for it. There's that the Dolphins are missing that a lot of those good teams have. That I agree. When people say we're not close to winning a Super Bowl, I agree. I think we've taken a major step back this season, and it would take an A+ offseason and some personnel moves and some coaching moves. And I'm not ready to say it's Mike McDaniel yet, but it's going to take Mike McDaniel doing a lot of self-introspective work and stop the buddy with all the players and stop the buddy with all the coaches and really take this offseason seriously. Because if we're sitting here on December 4th, 2025, and the Dolphins are below 500, we might already have a new coach.
Yeah. All I'm going to say on Holland then is he's the one guy left from that they were saying is a soft culture, at least on defense. So,
hey. The only people that know that are the people in the building.
Yeah. Omar, yes, I think the defense, the backfield can change. I think a good safety changes a lot of stuff. I actually think the corners, or at least Fuller when healthy, Ramsey, Cater Kahu, have been more good than bad. You like to see more from Storm Duck, but he's an undrafted free agent. Cam Smith, we're probably going to have to chalk him up as a bust, unfortunately.
And you saw
But
Jason Mater just got signed back to the practice squad.
yep,
I'd like to see him get called up for a couple games. He was a guy that looked good in the preseason. So let him get a little crack. Let some of those guys, let Brett, for the love of God, can we let some of those young tight ends play a full game?
I would agree.
Like, why? Why not? It can't get worse.
Yeah. Shout out to Chris Kaufman too, because Chris Kaufman pointed out that we like a majority of the NFL has defensive starters that are in their fourth year or younger, and most of ours are in their ninth year or older. So we do have to get younger. And again, this is where if you want to fire Chris Greer, you can say this is why we do it, because in the years, I'll give you an example. Les Snead with the Rams. They have not had this year was the first year they had a first round pick since they took Jared Goff. They hit on every defensive player when not having. I'm not expecting that, but we didn't have a lot of picks in 2022 or 2023. We have not seen Channing Tindall, I think, got 1 or 2 defensive snaps in 3 years. He's done. Cam Smith's probably done. We just haven't hit. Like, now we haven't had a lot of picks, but we just aren't hitting. Our last good, we just don't have it.
So Mr. S, our producer, just said Chris Greer and McDaniel built this roster 50-50. I don't agree with that. The quarterback was drafted before McDaniel. And Greer has been here since the year, 2000?
Yep.
He's been GM coaches before McDaniel. I don't think it's 50-50. I don't think it's 100-0.
I think it's either you get rid of
I think the difference between the two is I think that Mike McDaniel, and I'll show the other one he said there, I think Mike McDaniel has room to grow. There are aspects. I think he might have gotten a head coaching job a little too early. He's the type of guy that I think will be an amazing head coach his second time around. But I think that he has room to grow and the potential's there. And I think that I could see over the next few years McDaniel turning into what people thought, being a really good coach. I've seen enough from Chris Greer to determine that he should no longer be the GM of the Miami Dolphins.
I would agree with that. You are what your record says.
I agree 100% with what Flipper said down there. I am sure that Chris Greer is a wonderful person. And again, like I said before about Gus Malzahn, I wish him the best of luck. The old Vince McMahon term with his future endeavors. But it's time. It's time to move on. I've gone off of what I said a couple weeks ago, which is we need to bring in a guy that can work with Mike McDaniel. We need to bring in a CEO of this team.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, because the biggest issue with Chris Greer, and he admits to it, is he will get you the player the coach wants, which there is some good to that, but you have to be able to say, no, we need to do this. And I know everybody loves Jalen Wright. Trading up to get a 4th-round pick, to get a running back you don't use, doesn't look good. Now, we don't drudge him just on his rookie year, but moves like that cannot be made.
But, Brett, we talked about it, and that's been the biggest problem with the draft since day one. And we've talked about this with almost everybody we've had on the show, is that the Miami Dolphins, and we said on draft night that it was going to be the downfall of Chris Greer. And I think I used the words, he drafted a team for a season that he wasn't going to be the GM of.
You did.
Because when he drafted the players, he drafted it in the 2024 draft. He drafted those guys for 2025, and I don't think he makes it to 2025.
Nope, I'd agree. With here, the negligence on offense and defensive line really pissed me off. So, Omar, I don't think that we've neglected. We've actually invested a lot. It's just that aside from Robert Hunt and Austin Jackson the last 2 years in the draft, all the offensive linemen he's drafted have sucked. And that's not consolation, but so I explain this, and Jordan, you know this. To me, you have to get someone who can contribute, if not year 1, year 2, in the first 4 rounds. Players we have drafted in those rounds since Brian Flores' first year, so 2019. Mike Dieter.
He
Austin.
was starting for somebody a couple weeks ago.
Yep, Houston. Mike Dieter, Austin Jackson, Robert Hunt, Solomon Kinley, Liam Eichenberg, Patrick Paul. Those are all offensive linemen in rounds that I would consider premium rounds. Austin Jackson has been solid the last 2 years, but we all thought he was a bust going into last year. Rob Hunt was good, overpaid, but good. Dieter never really got going with us. Kinley was cut, I think, in his second year. Ike, we're probably moving on from, but, and we can go even further back, but because the team historically has been pretty awful at drafting offensive linemen. And, you get Laramie Tunsil, was good, but before Laramie Tunsil, have we drafted a good offensive line? What, Mike Pouncey and Jake Long are the last two good offensive linemen we've drafted. Maybe Juwan James. So it's not the investments. It's just we just are awful at scouting offensive linemen. So that does need to change. Mike McDaniel, I think he just has to have an ego check. And for you guys who are joining us now, the word I've used a lot this year is I think there was an arrogance with McDaniel, at least with his system, where he thinks as long as he has Tua, he's fine. He can put anybody there. And Tua makes us a great team, good to great team. But said this before, when Mike White is bad in preseason, you need to get someone better for the practice squad than Tim Boyle. That was a mistake. You cannot.
I would love to know whose decision Tim Boyle was.
They
I would
both,
love to know whose
everybody's,
decision. What?
they all came out and said it was Mike McDaniel's decision. That was the first name he asked for. I don't know why, but that's it.
First?
That's what they said. I'm just taking it face value there. You got to do more than just sign Jack Driscoll and then he doesn't win the job and you get rid of him. Like, you got to do more than that. So
my brother texted me one day over the offseason and said he saw Jack Driscoll in a
that's also there, quality over quantity.
And he said, this guy's not it.
That's fine.
But Brett, I have an important question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that Mississippi State turned into a shell of itself and the program fell apart more so because of the death of Mike Leach or because of Jeff Lebby going in there? And if Jeff Lebby were to go to UCF, should I be worried? Because to me, when I hear the name Jeff Lebby get thrown around, I love them as an offensive coordinator. I really love them as an offensive coordinator. But I'm not sure about how I feel about a potential of him as a head coach.
I think that I would laugh my ass off if you guys hired Jeff Lebby.
Do you think, did the Mississippi State program fall apart because of him? Is that
No.
I think, to me, looking at it from the outside, I think that's more about Mike Leach.
The issue is because before that they hired Zach Arnett, who was the D coordinator. I think they're just trying too hard to hold on to the Mike Leach magic. Or Mike, and rest his soul, you can't do that.
To go to Omar's question, though, I got this, Mr. S. I got this. Don't worry. When when I look at the quarterback room, I want to draft somebody in the mid rounds. I think that that's the direction you need to go. And I don't think that should be a 7th round pick. I think that should be a guy that you scout and think could be a good quarterback. One of those guys that are projected to go maybe in the 1st that fall to the 3rd. I look at maybe one of those 3rd round compensatory picks that we have, or a 5th in being a spot that we should add a backup quarterback. And you should also be putting a guy on the roster, keeping a guy like Tyler Huntley on the roster in training camp. So if it were me going into training camp next year, it would be Tua, a 3rd round pick, Tyler Huntley, and an undrafted free agent in camp.
I think Huntley will do a lot better actually being in his system for a year. I also don't, like I said, I don't think the play calling, especially in the Titans game, did him any favors. But I'm with you. I would draft a guy, and I would say the 4th to 6th round. I think the 3rd, you're still looking a little early. I'd have to look at the wide. I would have to look at the quarterbacks. I see Mr. S saying Jameis. I don't want Jameis Winston as a backup, but
see this little battle that Mr. S and Omar were having down here?
I
Go
see
back and
that.
forth. Mr. S told me to piss off, and Omar's cheering me on. It's wonderful. It's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know who you're going to sign who has a playoff win under their belt. Yeah, we'll see. But, funny enough, all this negativity, I actually think the Dolphins are going to rebound against the Jets. If they don't,
we definitely will rebound against the Jets. We're going to win on Sunday.
Yeah, we are. I don't even really feel like doing a prediction of it. I think we're going to win. The Jets, literally everybody except their fans and the national. Well, I should rephrase that. You and I, maybe not definitely not the national media who had them as Super Bowl favorites. You and I said they were going to implode.
Yes, we will.
Now, I would say this: I would definitely bring Joe Douglas in to help with our personnel and our scouting.
Yes, Brett, I'm going to give you 3 names for our candidates for our backup quarterback next season. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Name number 1, Dylan Gabriel. I think he might go a little high, but you don't really see quarterbacks go. You see him go right up top, and you see him go a little, you drop a little. I think that Dylan Gabriel will be one of those guys that drops. He's undersized, but I think he's a lot like Tua in makeup. And I think if something were to happen to Tua, Dylan Gabriel would be a very easy transition. Also, Dylan Gabriel played at UCF, but I'll stop for now. Curtis Rourke is another guy. I think Curtis Rourke is a guy that can come in. He was a veteran quarterback. He was MAC Player of the Year. He's having a great year at Indiana. I think he's definitely a guy that I can see come in and have a good career as a backup quarterback. And then the third guy that I had him on the tip of my tongue, is Haynes King from Georgia Tech. I think Haynes King is mobile enough. I don't think he's an amazing passer. I think he'd be a little more of those 6th, 7th round type guy. But I think he's a gritty enough guy that could come in and grow. And I think he's a guy that was a high enough prospect that you might be able to get something out of.
I think Haynes King is a better version of Skylar Thompson.
And he could also be a little Taysom Hilly.
Yeah, could do that. I would say Rourke or Dylan Gabriel as day 3 picks is fine. I don't want him, but I got to shout out Zach's Syracuse Orange and say Kyle McCord wouldn't be a bad choice on day 3 either.
I do think that Kyle McCord will make a good backup.
And
to answer Omar, I think with the way the roster is constructed, you're going to always keep 3 quarterbacks now at this point.
Yeah, you can protect the third, so you have until they do the thing where you can protect the quarterback on the practice squad. Yeah, you're gonna have 3, especially because you can just keep them active. So yeah, we are.
What was your list, Flip? What was Flipper's list?
Jimmy G and Flacco.
I don't hate Jimmy G. Obviously, Flacco's fine too. I think both of those are very fine options. Yep. But to me, it would be Tua, Jimmy G, or Flacco, and then one of those rookies that I named. We were talking, Flipper, about going Tua, Huntley, and one of those rookies. So either way, there should definitely be a veteran on the roster, and there should be a rookie on the roster.
Yeah. Now, just to talk about the Jets for a little bit, Jordan, it's not fun. It's kind of boring, but I was going to say it's the normal Jets case where it's awful offense, good defense. But even the defense has fallen off of a cliff since Robert Saleh got fired.
And the Packers have gone up since Robert Saleh got hired.
Yeah, but...
Are you going to watch the Aaron Rodgers documentary?
No interest.
Nope.
Yeah. Sauce Gardner might be... It sounds like he's leaning towards being out this week. Also sounds like Anthony Walker is going to be out for us. I don't think this is going to be a very particularly close game. Guys, you're not going to get we've all seen the Jets. We want to laugh at them. They're hiring their ex-GM who ruined their franchise to find their new GM.
They're hiring Mike Tannenbaum, Brett. You don't have to say their ex-GM. He's not unfamiliar to us. They're hiring Mike Tannenbaum to conduct. You know what would be the greatest thing in all of sports of all time?
Suck a dong,
search, he names himself.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
That would be the capper of all cappers if he names himself the GM of the Jets.
Just to humor Mr. S, if we lose at that point, I think you just you got to sit at that point. It's definitely you just got to blow it up. At that point, I'm like, all right, that's when I'm kind of like Mike McDaniel. You're officially on the hot seat if you lose to these Jets.
Oh yeah, If you lose at home to the Jets on Sunday to end your season, you're on the hot seat for the next couple weeks.
Yeah,
I think it's Mike McDaniel losing this game Sunday is very similar to Ryan Day losing to Michigan.
Yes. I will also say this: if we keep Danny Crossman after this year,
no, what Ryan Day did was worse.
Yes.
What Ryan Day did was so much worse, but it's of the same caliber.
If we keep Danny Crossman after this year, I'm 100% on Mike McDaniel out. And let me also go back to the game against the Packers. I know Malik Washington fumbled that punt, and it was a rookie mistake. But when your unit makes as many mistakes as Danny Crossman's special team unit makes, you're getting the blame. So,
come on, man. Like, and, they were horrible last year. And that's the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing that I have a problem with. And I've said it a number of times. I hate that this year's Miami Dolphins team has the same issues to a T, Brett. The same exact issues that last year's team had.
Well, we do have a middle of the field threat, at least, in Jonnu Smith.
Okay. Okay.
So there's one difference.
And we're worse in a number of areas.
Yes. What happened was, and I've said this, I get the theory of what they wanted to do on the offensive line because the theory works everywhere, but you still have to put some effort into it. Yeah, I don't know what else to say other than that. Like, we need more. I honestly kind of think I might consider moving off of Tyreek Hill after the year. And that's nothing against him. I just think we need to change the mindset of the team.
I'm not going to say that yet.
I'm not saying I want to. I'm just saying I think you got to consider.
Also, and let's be clear about something. Tyreek Hill's one of the best receivers, possibly in NFL history.
He is, and I'm not saying he's
probably in NFL history.
But to me, when we've had the issues we had and got worse, you got to consider making a change.
I think if you are making that move, now you're really talking about firing Mike McDaniel. However, after next season, there is an out in Tyreek Hill's contract with no dead money.
Yeah.
So, and if we cut him now, it is $31 million dead. It looks like, we save about $4 million cutting him, $3.5 million cutting him going into next season. That's not happening.
No, fair enough.
I think there is a very good chance that we release him after next season and void that contract, or that's when he retires.
This is a fair point too, Omar. I think
I totally agree. And I said what Omar said. If you're talking about Tyreek Hill's not going to be on this team the next year, you're talking about bringing in a new coach, tearing everything down, trading for picks, and full-blown rebuild. I think that
in terms of who's safe, I think the only person that's safe on the team is Tua. I still don't understand why everybody wants to talk about Tua because he has proven his worth. We're not getting into the Tua discussion, but I think he's the one person that is safe.
Brett, I want to be nice, and I understand nobody's perfect. Tua has a rough record against good teams. Tua, before the last couple, struggled in cold games. Tua has his injury history dating back to college. All those things are true. But if you watch football, if you watch all the NFL teams play on Sunday, and you watch the Miami Dolphins with an open mind, with Tua and without Tua, Tua is by far the most important player on the Dolphins, by far the most talented player on the Dolphins, and he is the future and the captain of the Miami Dolphins. I am all aboard Tua and this whole Tua experiment. And I think that anybody who is picking that battle against him now just has a personal vendetta and is I don't want to call them a troll, but that's what they're out there doing.
Apparently, Tua plays a lot of golf with Poyer. I do think you do have to consider tearing down the defense.
Tua, and for the record, I don't know if that's saying Tua plays too much golf. I know for a fact that Tua's rookie year and his second year, he was at Jacaranda Golf Club. Was Rolling Hills, whatever that is there. He was there a lot. So Tua's always played a lot of golf. Poyer's probably just one of the guys that plays the most with him.
Which of those losses, I guess you can say two of the Bills get like now he did play. I think Tua's played well in two of the last three Bills games. The Bills have been bad, but they've had our numbers basically for years. So take him out.
The first Bills game was partly on Tua. I thought even before his injury, and we talked about that. We took his injury out of it, and he really struggled in that game.
Yeah.
And we got raced in that game.
And that goes back to, and you and I have talked about this before, where I think the mindset coming into the year was wrong. And I felt, and this goes to Mike McDaniel where he needs to change. I think they came with the mindset is we could stroll until the playoffs, and we're not that good yet.
Which is one of the reasons why I would like to see what Mike McDaniel can do this offseason.
Yeah. Now, I will also say this. I don't think we're as far away as other people think. And I will point this out too. If you look at the Chargers, and I'm not saying just because of Jim Harbaugh, but they had an awful defense last year with 3 elite pass rushers. And they were bad last year. You put Jesse Minter as a defensive coordinator who comes from the same system we are, and they become a top defense. I think we have some personnel issues we do have to adjust, but I think we're closer. And I think Tua has proven at this point, if you get him a competent wide receiver, he is going to make a play.
Yeah, I agree.
Brett,
can we win out? Pause. I know we can. Can is boring. Will the Miami Dolphins win out?
Twice against the Jets, the Niners at home, Browns. If you're looking at how the teams we're playing against are playing, we absolutely can and should win out. If you're just looking at how the teams we're playing against are playing. However,
can and should is one thing. Will the Miami Dolphins win out?
The game that is giving me pause is actually primetime game against Cleveland.
Agreed.
I'm not putting this on Tua anymore, but the Dolphins historically, for like the last, basically since Chad Henne left and against the Jets, we have struggled badly in primetime games. So that's the one game I have issues with. 5 standalone games. Yeah, it's fair, but I think we can. And you're talking about the Niners being the hardest, yes, but they're also playing. They look atrocious right now. So I'm just going 100% based off of how teams are playing, Mr. S. Omar, I have been
it's funny, Omar. If you do not control your own destiny to make the playoffs, you do not deserve to make the playoffs. I don't know if it was you in the group earlier, Omar, or somebody else that said earlier about that exact fact. I actually did some research, and I think it was 5 or 6 teams in NFL history, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, that needed both to win and another team to lose in order to make the playoffs, and ended up winning the Super Bowl. Yeah. Fun fact of the day.
As for draft, if we lose this weekend, I'm 100% in the lose out, so we have a chance at Mason Graham or Will Johnson.
Brett, I will make you a deal. If the Miami Dolphins lose this week, we will do, instead of a game preview, we will do a mock draft next week.
Okay. We will do a live mock draft, and I love me some mock drafts, but I am not looking forward to it.
Well, Brett, don't get me wrong. We're going to do a mock live draft anyways.
Yeah.
Maybe not next week. We're definitely doing one at some point too. However, if we lose this week, there will be one on the show replacing the game episode next week.
Yeah. And for those wondering why we're not really talking about the Jets, we know the Jets. We know what their weaknesses are. we should win that game. Like, even with our weakened offensive line and no running game, especially if Sauce is out, we should win that game.
This should be a big Tua game.
Yep. If we got Mason Graham, I would be so conflicted because one that
Omar,
mentioned.
I don't know if you know this. Brett's a Michigan fan.
Yeah, I love Michigan. So, but Mason Graham is probably the best defensive tackle prospect in at least 5 to 7 years. He's that good.
Brett, by the time we come on this show again, UCF will have a head coach. I might need to just do an emergency episode when they hire somebody. There's a possibility, especially if it's somebody big. But in all seriousness, I'd be very excited if the Dolphins could turn this thing around in the next couple of days. I think they might this week. I think it'll be very, very interesting to see.
Yes, better than Jalen Carter. That may or may not be being a homer too, but still.
It's close. It's very close. But we'll talk draft next week, Brett. You got anything else?
Just fuck the Jets and go beat the Jets. That's basically it.
Brett, who gets the Michigan offensive coordinator job?
What's his name? The Tulane offensive coordinator. He seems to be the hot name. Joe Crondish, I think his name is.
Craddock, something like that?
Craddock, yeah, Craddock.
The Tulane offensive coordinator. Does that mean that he's not going with Summerall?
I don't think so.
It also looks like he was talking to Oklahoma.
Yeah, but they hired the Washington State offensive coordinator.
All right, so give him to Michigan. We'll see. By next week, Mr. S told me on the side that I'm going to get 10 to 15 minutes of college football over the next couple of weeks. So we'll talk some college football on next week's show.
And of course, because I see people talking about Chris Greer. If Chris Greer is fired, Jordan and I will come up with a list of potential replacements.
Right away. Yep. I will have it by the next episode. There was a name. What's his first name? Brian Gain. Is that his name?
Yep. He was an assistant here at under Ireland and Parcells.
And then he left, and he was a general manager in Houston for a couple of years. And now he's helping build the roster in Buffalo. We actually hired him and promoted him twice in Stephen Ross's first couple of years as owner. So I see that being a potential name that if we make a firing, and you want me to give you one name right now, Brian Gain is the name I'll give you. But we all know that we really want Louis Riddick.
Yeah, you and Mr. S want Louis Riddick.
I want Louis Riddick. I wanted Louis Riddick for a decently long time now. So
yeah, I don't really care.
Yeah, I would like that to be the guy.
But we will come up with that. We're hitting that hour show. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Go Dolphins, beat the Jets, and hopefully next week we are talking about the playoff push and not draft prospects.
Charge on.
Have a good night, everybody.